Welcome everybody to the first segment of the Northwest music scene, and we have a special treat for everyone tonight. It's my privilege to introduce Mr. James A. Hendrix, who has so graciously conceded to let us come into his home and have a real sit down and chat. So we will get on with Mr. Hendrix's interview. We have some artists that are well known in the Pacific Northwest. We're going to feature excerpts from concerts, and we're going to talk to them about the effect that Jimi Hendrix has had on their music and the music world in general. So bear with us. Well, when did you first see your son?
After he was 3 years old when I come out of service and being 45, the latter part of 45.
So he was 3 years old.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I don't mean to really pry into your personal life, but would you mind explaining just what you had to go through in order to see your son for the first time?
Well, I come home, there was a lady was taking care of him down there in Berkeley, California.
Uh-huh.
I forget her name now. I know I have her name in some of my little notes.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, when I came back, that's the first thing I wanted to do was just go down and get him, which I did. Well, I did run up to Vancouver to see my mother,
Uh-huh.
and then from there I came back to Seattle and then went down there and got Jimi and brought him back here to Seattle. And that's what it was.
And if I could be allowed to impose just a hair more, I know I'm really getting close, aren't I? What was it like when you first saw him? I mean, after all you'd gone through during his birth and what have you?
Oh, it was real strange.
I guess it would be.
We didn't know each other. This woman had a picture of me in my uniform, sitting there on the mantle, and
Uh-huh.
he knew that was Daddy. And naturally, she told him, well, what's when I come there, because he knew I was coming.
Uh-huh.
And so it was kind of hard getting acquainted with it.
Did it? You know how little ones often make shy. Did he display any shyness, or was he fairly open
No,
with
he
you?
came right to me on the kind of some of his little friends around there. Their dads were around, and sometimes he'd call them Dad. And the one would tell him, well, that's not your dad. Your dad's in the service.
Uh-huh.
And he knew that picture. He always pointed that and knew that was me.
So it must have been a pretty good likeness of you.
Anyways, he was so glad when he got to meet his dad in person.
Oh, that's great. So I understand that you pretty much raised Jimi and his brother by yourself. Is this true, or?
Oh, a good deal of time after I got back.
So you experienced the single parent
Oh, yeah.
life.
Very much so.
It must have been really an interesting thing because of the fact that you were a male as opposed to a mother. I know they've generally always had some kind of assistance for mothers and children. Did you experience any kind of difficulties that were peculiar to the fact that you were a father with children?
Oh, yeah. Well, I had to cook, wash, bathe, all of that. That's the reason why I hate to cook now. When Jimi got older, he said, Dad, he said, when you going to get married again? So got tired of my cooking.
And get a cook, huh?
Yeah. I said, well, it's easy to get into. I said, man, I said, it's hard to get out of.
Well, when in your recollection was the first indication to you that Jimi was talented musically?
Well, I know he used to do a lot of drawing, and he always said like do something with his hands.
Uh-huh.
And of course, when they got him his first guitar, well, I thought it was kind of nice for him to have something around that he could play and be interested in, because I liked music.
Uh-huh.
And to keep him off the streets and all sorts of stuff. And after I saw where he went and got right into it, then I First guitar I got for him was just a Bigelow acoustic for $5. I bought it from a friend. His name was James also.
That I've always wondered about, and a couple of people had asked me too. How did you come to realize that he actually had an album out and it was really being accepted as a great piece of music? Did he call you and tell you, or did someone else tell you, hey, they're playing your son's music, or how did that come about?
Oh, I'd heard about him. Well, when he went to England, Charles Chandler, he's the one that had him to go over there to England and build a group around him. And Jimmy just said, okay, he went over there with Chandler, and I think Chandler used to belong to the Animals or something. Anyways, when Jimmy got over there, well, he called me and told me about he's in England. He said, it looked like I'm on my way to the big time. He said, right now, he said, I'm auditioning for a bass player and a drummer. And that's where Mitch and Noel came in. And he said he's going to call his group the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and he's going to spell his name Jimi.
I see. Checking that with Dad.
And so he said he was going to do this and do that for me. And I told him at that time, well, I was in the process of buying a home right then. I was living out in Queen Anne at that time. And I was doing okay in my gardening business. And I told him, I said, well, you just keep your nose clean. I said, I'm doing okay.
Did you really have any idea that at that point that he would become as great as he did become and is?
No, I mean, even after he became that great, I mean, I still couldn't believe it. And just, it kind of just flipped my mind.
I guess you're sort of in a state of semi-shock for a long time.
Yeah, well, I just kind of simmered along with, because shortly after that, well then, well, I didn't buy these magazines, but some of the kids got these little small magazines, music magazines. They'd have all about different up-and-coming new entertainers and that, and they had about Jimmy in there in London, called him the Wild Man of Borneo. And
Wild Man of Borneo?
Yeah, because at that time, that was when they were wearing the afros and the big head. Anyways, I know one girl saw his picture in this magazine. She gave it to him. She said she thought it was me at first. She said, what the hell, dude? Dressed like that. And then she
thought it was you.
And it went on saying about the sensation he was over there in London and that. And I said, well, I just played it cool fine.
What was your impression when you first...
Well, it really knocked me out. Well, I always thought to myself, I told him, like, when he's a kid at home before he went to service that, and he learned how to play, and he had his electric guitar then. And I said, well, when you get into it, I said, you do something original. Do your own thing.
He certainly didn't disappoint you, did he?
He sure didn't. Because I know when I listened to that record, I was used to certain type music, like the original black style music and blues and that. But I listened for these little certain breaks that I was used to, but they didn't come in there. I mean, it went on to something else, and it's taking a little something to get used to. I mean, like it really flipped out. I mean,
I'll bet.
Well, he sure did something original. I mean.
Yeah, and the rest of the world kind of agrees with you. We're going to stop here for just a brief moment, and we'll be back with Mr. Hendrix.
too loud and went out there, so we hope it sounds better than it does up here. How does it sound? Sounds what? Good. Okay.
want to thank our audience for rejoining us here on the show. We're going to have a little more with Mr. Hendrix shortly, but here we have with us a group I believe is called the Gypsy Boys.
Yep, Gypsy Boys.
Gypsy Boys. And I'd like to more or less just give a little bit of background from my own knowledge, which isn't that extensive. I have seen the group perform many times, and I've always seen a real great audience response. And I want to ask each one of them how they feel about Jimi Hendrix and his contribution to music, and perhaps how each one of them has been inspired. So let's just start with the gentleman on the end here, and we'll ask you to identify yourself.
My name is Bigelow.
And Bigelow, you played the bass for Gypsy Boys.
That's right.
I also understand that you're not dubbed as a bass player per se. Is this true?
Yes, I am. I'm dubbed.
No, he's not. He's a guitar.
Well,
Heavily as a bass player. But
And a
that's
singer
okay.
and a
I see.
dancer.
That's okay. That's all right.
But he's pretty.
Jimi Hendrix quote, which I believe comes from Hit Parade magazine. I'm not exactly sure which year, but Jimmy was quoted in that magazine as saying that he had made it to the top, but one of the things that he wanted to express was that it was very, very difficult for new talent to really be noticed. And I think Jimmy himself traversed the country for quite a while and played with a lot of named people before he was ever appreciated for the artist that he really is. And that's one of the reasons that Northwest Music Scene is going to be bringing not only this show, but in subsequent shows, a lot of different artists, and give them exposure to you, the audience, and be aware that there is up and coming new talent. I'd like to move, I'll be back to you, Bigelow. I'd like to move here to your name, sir?
Jeff Robinson.
Jeff Robinson.
But I stuck Jimmy on the front of that.
I see.
Okay.
Did you do that, or did your fans do that?
He did that.
He did that. It was interesting. I happened to be in the company of Mr. Robinson the other day, and a little boy was on his bicycle. He saw Mr. Robinson get out of a car, and he said, "You dress like Jimi Hendrix." and I was kind of impressed, because there are a lot of, especially black children, that are only now hearing of Jimi Hendrix. And I'm really happy, for one, that Jimmy has received all the acclaim that he very well deserves. So we're going to move along here with Mr. Robinson. Would you like to tell me, you do look like Jimi Hendrix and your dress and what have you, would you kind of explain to me what his influence has been on you and your music?
Well, my opinion of Jimmy is, if there wasn't Jimmy, there wouldn't be a lot of what's happening now. It's like Jimmy was ahead of his time. Jimmy was an innovator. He was somebody that's never going to die.
I think that's true.
You know, I mean, that's the truth. It's been, 22 years now? And he's just as much alive today as he was back then. And, yeah, exactly, more so alive. And, I mean, there are no words to give to Jimmy other than the words that the Bible uses, Messiah or something like that. You know?
Musical Messiah.
Exactly. You know what I mean? He opened the door for cats.
Okay.
He opened the door.
And that's
Broke it down.
interesting. I want to elaborate on that in just a few moments, but I'd like to move right now to the gentleman here directly on my right. And you
That's
look like
us.
a drummer. I hear you are.
Yeah, I'm a drummer. I be slamming.
And your name?
My name is Ron Bryant.
Ron Bryant. And would you like to comment more or less on the same type of questions that I've asked the other two gentlemen?
Well, you know, these guys, I mean, I don't see where I could add too much to what they've said, but my opinion of Jimmy, he's a great artist, innovator, just like Jeff said. His guitar style, people are still copying it today. There's a lot of guitar players out there now who are receiving a lot of accolades, but actually they pattern themselves after Jimmy. Even some of them don't even give the brother the credit that he should be getting, because they're just copying him. And I would like to expound on what Biggs was saying about the music industry in terms of new artists that are coming up. And I think that now, whereas, you know, Jimmy, like you said, he did what we call paying your dues. Being out there in the mix, you know, sweating and bleeding, trying to get some recognition. And whereas today, where the music business has become even more commercial, I think more so than ever before, to where you've got these manufactured groups where producers are manufacturing groups because there's a certain market out there where they know that these people are going to be out there spending their money buying this stuff. To whereas you got a lot of hard-working cats that are out here in the trenches, what I call a crab pot. Everybody's in the crab pot trying to climb out. Fortunately, some of us make it, some of us don't. But in the terms of Jimi, you know, it's like he's one of the guys that you know, he's up there with some of the great artists of all time who actually have changed music, actually changed the evolution of music to where, you know, it went a certain way, and he's one of the guys that put it there.
He was driving.
Yeah,
he was driving.
And that brings me back to another point about the quote that I mentioned, that Jimi said in that same article that he would like to see, if it were at all possible with him, that something be done to actually help new artists to get exposure while they're groveling away in the, what was that you called it, the crab pot?
Yeah, right. Everybody's in the crab pot. And let me just add this, is that, you know, see, right now, one thing I would like you big record execs to know out there is that there's a lot more going on in Seattle. There's a lot more going on in Seattle other than just rock. You know, you guys are coming here grabbing these rock bands. Check out what's happening on the other set. You know,
we can play rock too.
Yeah, we can play it all. There's a lot of things happening here in Seattle right now.
And this isn't a major attack on the labels, mind you.
Oh, no. But you know, just, you know, like you said, we're coming up, we're upcoming, we're trying to make it. There's a lot of untapped talent here in Seattle.
Can I say something?
Yes,
no,
go ahead.
It's something that this cat 2 years ago, you know, we was playing at this club one time. He says, "Hey, yeah, I really like it here. You don't have to act a certain way and do a certain thing. You know, and that's the way it is with the labels anymore. Almost, you know, either you look that way and you be that way, and you might get a break. But Jimi said, I'm gonna be Jimi." And you know, he was great enough. He said, "Look, I'm just gonna." Al said, "Hey man, do your own thing," and he did that. And that's what he is never gonna die.
I do think it is of interest that Jimi, along with a lot of other artists that have particularly come out of the Northwest, not only went across the United States without really getting a lot of recognition or breaks, but had to actually be taken to Europe, excuse me, to actually be appreciated for what he himself had to offer. And I think that's a subject that needs addressing in the future. Gentlemen, I'd like to kind of offer you a free-for-all, but I'm kind of afraid to. I don't want a chaotic melee. But have all of you met Mr. Hendrix in the past?
Yes. Yes.
And I would like to ask each one of you to make a brief statement as to how you feel that Mr. Hendrix keeps Jimi's music alive or enhances Jimi's image or anything of that nature. Just comment freely. We'll start with the gentleman on the end here. Bigelow?
I'm not really that good at making comments. I don't know. I'd have to talk to Al and find out, you know, what he thinks about the music that's around here, if any of it seems to be worth promoting.
Well, I don't speak for Mr. Hendrix, but he seems to be a very amiable chap, and perhaps after the show you might make some arrangements to discuss these things with him. Jimmy Jeff, they call you. Would you like to comment on that?
I'm coming on Mr. Al Hendrix, you know. I traveled about 2,000 miles just to meet the man's presence. And
was this recently?
Things that I'm not going to put on the show. There's some good times and some bad times. We're not going to talk about the bad because it's good now. So, but I got to give the man credit because, I mean, when things go on for Jimi, he's there. You know, he doesn't let it die. He can't let it die because it's not going to die, for one. But I think he really appreciates the, you know, like, because I mean, we've been around, you know, where he's been there at times and cats been playing, and I know some cats that play with me and stuff. you know, he kick it with him. You know,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's like, yeah. it was
Makes you
happening.
feel comfortable.
Yeah,
He'll make
it's
you
not
feel
like,
good.
hey, I'm Jimi Hendrix Dad. No, he's everyday people, like Sly said, everyday people, you know.
He didn't know who he
And,
was.
yeah, I mean,
You know, he's not gonna wear a big flag and say,
yeah, you don't
he's
need a
not
flag.
flying a
You know,
flag. It's
he's
just there, man.
yeah.
You
I
find
think
out.
I think that just from my own observations of Mr. Hendrix, I think I'd even say he's a little shy sometimes.
Hold it.
Oh, wait.
What? Stop.
Have you heard him sing?
I may make some comments about some rumors that have been spread about Mr. Hendrix later, but and his musical expertise. But is there anything that I haven't asked that you gentlemen would like to contribute?
I didn't get to comment on Mr. Hendrix.
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me.
Hey,
Don't
let him comment.
Let him come.
Don't have
We're gonna get mad.
Oh, okay.
Don't have me going off now. No, I just like to say that I really don't know Mr. Hendrix that well personally, but the contact that I have had with him, I know I left my bass drum case at his house for a year, and he didn't throw it away or anything. You know, and I call out, I say, Al, I said, yeah, this is Ron. I'm coming to get my bass drum case. He said, okay, come on by.
There were a few rumors about him disposing of your case.
Well, you
I
know,
believe.
it took me a year to finally go get it, but it was cool. It was all in one piece, and you know, but the contact that I have had with him, he seems like a real warm, nice guy. And I have to agree with Jeff that he's a real low key. You know, a lot of people don't even less. But see, I've been knowing Mr. Hendrix for years and years when I was a little kid, because he used to, when he had his gardening business, he used to do landscaping on some people's homes that lived next door to my parents. I used to see him all the time, and but he's a nice guy, and I just think that my own personal view would be this: is that see, I have a son, and you know, Jimmy is a legend.
Yeah, that's for sure, undisputed.
Yeah, and the thing is that, you know, being a father, I'm sure that Mr. Hendrix, you know, he dealing with all the things he has to deal with, and always being there for people who want to do tributes to Jimmy and things like that. And sometimes it probably may be kind of hard on him, you know.
And excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you
That's
off.
okay. So yeah, my observation of him is he's just as great as his son, you know.
Exactly.
I mean, when you get to know him.
Exactly, I go for
Would you gentlemen like to give Mr. Hendrix a hand?
Yeah. In the key of B.
In the key of B. Okay, as I had asked just prior to that, if there's any other comments that you want to make, please feel free to do it in an orderly fashion, of course.
I like to make.
Oh man.
You go first.
You go first.
Man, you go.
I'll go first.
You go ahead.
Whoops,
Okay.
time's up.
Well,
Like if
See ya.
see this video, you know, he gets to check this video out. I just wanted to say, things are cool. You know, when these businesses thrive, we're gonna make it, and we need to all stick together. That's about it.
And I'm sure if you gentlemen have anything to do about it, you're only going to pick up the torch and run as far as carrying on what Jimmy passed on musically.
I'd move in.
It's a track team.
Uh-huh.
It's a track team.
If I get a chance, I'd like to talk to, I know that one of the gentlemen has to leave fairly soon. I would like to come back to the other two and ask you some basic questions concerning that. But right now we're going to pause right here. And
I didn't get to say anything.
but you come back. You come back.
open season on these two.
I won't survive.
Would you want me?
No, actually.
I didn't do it.
Look at he's teaming up now.
I didn't do it. You ain't got this all.
Back up that film, man. Don't waste all that film.
Well, the drummer had to leave, but we have Mr. Hendrix with us again, and we really appreciate you filling in.
He's gonna play drums tonight.
Oh, he is. Mr. Hendrix is going to play drums tonight.
Yeah.
You know, we shouldn't say that. There's been a number of rumors out about you, Mr. Hendrix, and your musical abilities.
Nothing surprising me.
Nothing surprising. Well, I know you gentlemen are in a hurry, and I just thought it would be nice if you could just chat with Mr. Hendrix for a moment, and I'd like to know specifically, do you have plans at all for your musical careers that you feel that you could get advice from Mr. Hendrix on, or that type of thing?
I want the same advice he gave Jimmy. I don't want no other, just what he gave Jimmy, you know.
And that was your famous one-liner, right?
Yeah.
Do your own.
Do your own thing. Keep wailing.
Keep wailing.
That's what I told Jimmy.
Hey,
Practice makes perfect, and that's it.
he did it to the max too, believe me.
Do you gentlemen, I know that you do a lot of cover music and a lot of different styles. Do you gentlemen do original music? That's something I think.
I'm going to say this. This man here, he's another Jimmy in my world. When I first met him, I said, man, where you been all my life, you know? I mean, it was like shocked. There's another mutant, you know?
Another mutant.
and you know, but
Basically.
as far as original music, he's sharp.
Uh-huh.
I have a little bit, but it's like, it's boring to me.
No.
You
But
and-
I really
got
believe
good
that
music.
no matter what he does or I do or what anybody does, anybody that truly loves to craft the music
Yeah.
has got to give it to Jimmy.
Uh-huh.
But in the beginning of your career, in the middle, in the end,
Yeah.
Somewhere down
he's
the line.
got to give it. I mean, because
Country, western,
there are
jazz,
two-
rock, metal,
Everything.
gospel,
Uh-huh.
blues,
everything.
all of it.
Yes.
Delta, all of it, man.
You got to give it
Well,
to
he's
Jimmy.
It
definitely-
started in this house. Y'all know it.
Exactly. It started right there.
It must have started here. I doubt it started in this house, was it?
Yeah, you know. The
Well,
house of Hendrix.
In his loins.
I don't know if the camera people can see any of the background here at Mr. Hendrix's, but we have am I correct in saying that these are only a few of the gold records that Jimmy has?
No, these are 5 of them. I have 2 other ones that I don't have.
Two more gold records.
Yeah.
I-
And there's still a lot of, most of these have all become, platinum.
Platinum.
Yeah,
Great.
man.
Of course, they don't do things of that sort so much now. They
Uh-huh.
usually have one of those, what's this, one of the deal they have. But
Uh-huh. And Mr. Hendrix, I understand you went to New York just recently, and there was a Grammy Award.
Well, the Grammy Award deal, that was, I didn't go for that, but I went for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I suppose that was very impressive.
Oh, yeah, it was something else.
I want to talk to you about that a little later. Well, these two gentlemen here, I wanted to throw you the free-for-all, and we have a couple of more seconds here. Is there anything that you'd like to say? And
I like his hair.
I was going to comment on that. Is that part of your showmanship?
No, it's just me doing what I do. 'Cause,
That's just you.
I get a lot of comments from people, a lot of weird looks.
I'm sure you do.
I do, man. You know,
It is impressive. It is.
my own mother asked me once a weird.
Moms?
So, like, I had to pull the hat off and let some people pull on it. You know,
Uh-huh.
it's hair.
So it is yours, in fact, right?
Right.
Well, that's interesting.
I'd like to make a comment on giving it up where it really started with me, giving it up to God, and thanking God for, because I lived through some hard times, which you'll probably hear about in time, but, and giving me another chance on life and showing me the real light. And I thank Jimmy for letting me understand that he was everything that he was really trying to say back then, when America was just really torn.
In turmoil, yeah.
Yeah, and he spoke the truth, and they just didn't want to hear it. And now, 22 years later, everybody is trying to get more of it, And I want to thank this character here. You're not a brother, you're a character,
I'm a spirit.
because I looked for him since I was like 13, and I didn't find it till I was. I'm not going to expose my age, but I didn't find it till then. And thanks, man.
Amen. Sorry.
Good. And there's one final question I'd like to direct to you. You mentioned earlier that you had come some 2,000 miles to meet Mr. Hendrix. Would you like to comment on that just briefly?
Yeah, I was playing in Minneapolis, and I met a guy named Buzzy Linhart. You know Buzzy?
No,
But he's in every Jimi book, and you know he did Vibes on the Cry Love album with Jimi, and it's on that album right there. Yeah. But I met Buzzy and I started playing with Buzzy, and he called me AJ, almost Jimi, you know.
Almost Jimi.
You know, they call me AJ Chicken Legs, which I would not show. but it was, you know, he was like, man, you know, and since I was 13 years old, you know, I looked at everything I could get on Jimi. The one that he was sitting on the stool playing the acoustic guitar, and I seen Al there, you know, and I was like, man, you know, it's the closest thing to Jimi, and that's really why I came here. You know, honestly, that's why I came to Seattle, and it was a calling almost. It was like, you know.
That's interesting. How long ago was that?
86.
86.
87.
87.
5 years. Yeah, 5 years. And I remember the first time I met him, you know, I don't know if you remember this, but it was at the Cotton Club. And when you walked in...
The Cotton Club here in Seattle?
Exactly. When you walked in, it was like, I know that guy. Who is that guy? And, you know, my mind was really kind of messed up, you know, but when we started playing, I found out who it was, man. It was...
And that wasn't...
I could die. I could have died the next day and been cool. You know what I'm saying?
If I recall, I think you almost did, but that was
well,
totally unrelated.
That'll come out in, what's that magazine they write? The one that tells all the lies.
Rolling Stone.
National Enquirer.
There you go. That'll come out.
And I hope we're not going to be under suit for that, but...
I don't know.
Anyways, I suppose we've run out of time, gentlemen. I want to thank both of you for your time and your cooperation. And you, Mr. Hendrix, I'm not quite through with you, but we're going to take a brief break here. Well, here we are again, just you and I. It's kind of peaceful now. I understand, and I just have a few more questions for you. I really appreciate your kindness in letting us come in again, as I said before. I understand that you frequently attend different shows for various musicians, what have you, and you have quite a good name for being real amiable in that respect. Do you feel any way obligated sometimes to go to these shows when musicians invite you, or do you just do it because you like it, or how do you feel about it?
I enjoy music, and who knows? I mean, I just like to go and listen to them. See, give them a little inspiration. I feel like if by me watching them kind of boost their ego or whatever.
If that helps them, then you're willing and there for them.
At least I can just be there and listen to them.
I think that's very commendable. It really is, because I have had occasion to talk to other persons that are in similar situations to yours, and they prefer a lot of times to keep a lot of distance between, shall we say, fans and themselves. But you have a particularly nice reputation as being an all-around great guy, ordinary fellow. I mean, neighborhood bar owners laud your presence, and you just seem to be the same Al Hendrix, I suppose, that you were before there ever was such a thing as a claim for Jimi Hendrix. And
I was been the same. I told Jimi, don't get swell here. Just be yourself. Just do.
Don't get big headed.
Yeah,
Although I don't know that much about Jimi as a person. He seems rather flamboyant on stage. However, I have seen footage of him off stage, and he seems to exude an aura of shyness to a degree. Would you say that that's an accurate description, that he was somewhat shy? Or how would you describe him as your son, as opposed to Jimi Hendrix, the Jimi Hendrix?
Oh yeah, he looks shy in his way. Of course, that flamboyant way on stage, that was kind of a way of just bursting out and kind of overflowing the shyness.
Just to let it all out on stage, huh?
And of course, he liked to jive around, get a little kidding amongst the guys and gals. I mean, people, you know. Well, apparently he was kind of shy and just, in a normal way. He wasn't a wallflower, but he'd just sit back and be quiet. He wouldn't be boisterous and make a whole lot of noise.
Sort of a mellow kind of a fellow. Huh?
There you go.
I wish I had gotten to know him a lot better. I used to see him in high school and what have you, but I really didn't know him as a person. I understand, Mr. Hendrix, back into your personal business briefly. I understand that you're going to be a grandpa here again shortly.
Yep, I was today.
You were today? Oh, that's great. Can I ask,
Yeah.
was it boy or girl?
Another boy.
Another boy, I thought so. And for the benefit of the audience, we're speaking about Mr. Hendrix's daughter, Janie, and her husband, Troy Wright.
Right.
And today, just today, at what time was it?
Around approximately 10 o'clock a.m.
10 a.m. they added to their already existed troupe of 3 young fellows, 1 more fellow, right? That means they have to try again for that girl.
Oh, this is they go.
That's it, right?
Troy said, Janie said, she don't do girls.
She don't do girls. Well, congratulations to them anyways. This is an eventful day. I enjoyed chatting with you. There's one last question, and this may be a bit of a touchy question, but it's something that people will ask. And once they find out that you know Jimi Hendrix's dad, they have these special questions they want to ask. And I just wanted to ask you, it must have been very, very difficult for you as a parent, as it would be for any parent, to lose a child. And the circumstances surrounding the loss of your son, where he had so many fans and so many people earthwide that just refused to let him be gone, has it made the grieving process for him continuous, or have you in some way been able to resolve the fact that he is in fact gone, but he will always be here?
Yeah, you placed it very well. Like, I can stand to talk for a while, because not a day go by that I don't think about it.
Naturally.
And just him being remembered, so it really makes me feel good.
Makes you feel good. Yeah. Do you just in your personal opinion, and I'm sure you had conversations with Jimi, before he passed. I don't know how recent or in what proximity to his death, but do you feel that his music would have continued along the rock vein, or did he ever mention anything to you about the thrust of his music or the direction that he was going to take as regards his music?
Well, he had said the last time he was here, and he was going to go into something different. He didn't know exactly what it was going to be himself at that time, but he said, I was sure that whatever it was going to be something extraordinary.
It was going to be extraordinary. Well, if the thrust he took in the first place was any indication, I think we've missed out on a great deal with his death. But hopefully his inspiration and the effect that he's had on musicians and in every type of style of music, he will continue to be expressed just from their love and admiration and their abilities and giving him what I feel is his proper due. And I certainly feel that you are deserving of a great honor. And I don't think there's anyone in the music industry, period, that would not agree with me. And again, I want to thank you very much for allowing us into your home. And we hope that we haven't laid a track record that we can't come back today. It's been fun. Thank you very much. And we're going to turn the program back over to the network. Well, we certainly hope that the first segment of Northwest Music Scene has delighted your musical palates. We want to express the fact that if you're interested in seeing a little more of what you've seen as regards Gypsy Boys, they will be playing June 16th, I understand, at Parker's here in Seattle. And we're going to extend an invitation to anyone that wants more to come out. And that's the 16th of June, 1992, here in Seattle. So this is Gail Davis, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. We've had a lot of fun, and we want to encourage you to watch Northwest Music Scene. We have lots more in store for you on future segments. Thank you, and good evening.